Uh, and this is why I always tell people, like, sometimes you don't even know what's going on in their lives. We
Mm-mm.
automatically assume that there's a certain level of ease that's happening with them because they're younger, because they're youth. That I realized when I was about 25 years old. No, even younger, excuse me, when I was at the juvie, when I was 21, I realized that there are some kids who are 10 years old who've had a 10 times harder life than me.
Yeah, absolutely. Same.
And, and I'm just like, how did this happen by 10 years old? And I thought I struggled,
Yeah.
but I didn't have, a parent that wasn't in my life. I didn't have people who abused me constantly since I was 3 years old. I didn't have, some of the stories that I heard. I don't even want to share it necessarily on this, but the amount that I've seen youth go through, it it it, it pushed me into this into that whole radical empathy
Yep.
mind frame, because if not, it's like, how else are we supposed to be able to help them? And so in order for us to do that, we have to be at a place where we first deal with the stuff that's going on with ourselves.
Right. That was perfectly said. And I say no to that too because I don't typically, I've shared a little bit about my first year in the room, one of my students being murdered.
I
But
see.
other than that, like, and not other than that, right? That's actually a lot of teachers have dealt with that. That is not like a big thing, anomaly, honestly, if you work in a lot of districts across the United States.
Yep.
It feels unfortunate to say that, but this is a caveat I give people because I do some stuff with media through the years and have written for some different newspaper outlets and stuff through the years since I started teaching. And one thing I like to remind people who are educators and working with youth in general, so especially youth pastors too.
Mm.
Um, Children don't come to you getting to choose the environment that they're in when they're children.
Mercy.
None of us chose our path as far as who we would necessarily be born to, all those things, right? This is all miraculous that we're here. But then on top of it, when you have those realizations, what drove me to want to get a PhD and focus on cultural neuroscience, cultural psychology. These are newer branches of psychology and neuroscience in the past 15 years. I wanted to do it through the school-based lens because regardless of what I was seeing, the thing that actually hurt the most in my early 20s was that I had, and to this day, I had family and friends who they just don't believe me.
Mercy.
They don't believe the stories. And it doesn't matter. So I think if anything, it does matter in the respect of when I had that realization, I think it bore in me like a more righteous anger
Mm.
to keep going and fighting. But that has also shifted through the years too, because it's like, okay, but that's also not empathy. It might be righteous, it might be anger that fuels, but that's not empathy. But that is, I think, what happens to some of us as educators and people who work with youth is that we then end up feeling really lonely because we feel like the people we love most who should understand us best they don't even believe that these people, real children, exist. And it's the same type of stuff I see with the Israel and Palestine conflict, the Israel trying to occupy Palestine that belongs to Palestinian people. But what would you say to that? So when we're being met with, and we're already going here, and I got a couple other questions that have to do with this same lane. And because you do speak about radical empathy, my entire frameworks are built around cultural empathy.
Yeah.
And it's something that I also own and admit to people like I've worked at my whole life. And in some ways, I didn't have a choice, right? Especially depending on where you grow up and who you're born to. I had to learn how to code switch from the time I was born. Like that was real in my household and with Amish and Puerto Rican relatives. And so I think that what I see most that is really, really hurting educators and students both is that we just aren't believing people.
Mm.
And sometimes I just scratch my head and go, why would I share anything? Like why would anybody want to share pain that's not real? But nobody wants to share these things that are hurtful.
Mm.
But then, so what would you say to people when they go, I've had this experience, or I work with kids and I see this trauma? They know, and they know that then we're going home to a nicer life. We have
Yeah.
our degrees, we have money. We're not meeting those same things. So I don't know. What would you say to people who are going through that and they go, I just like my husband doesn't even believe me, or my sister doesn't even believe me, or my own parents don't believe me. What would you say to people who experience
So
that?
I just want to be, you talking about the youth, or are you asking me now, what would I say to the person who doesn't believe, or what would I say to the person who's not being believed?
Ooh, let's do both.
Let's do
Let's do
both. Okay.
both.
The person who's not being believed first, number one, uh, I feel for you, because I think we've all been in situations where we have not been believed, where
Every human, every
we've
human.
shared information, and and I remember even like telling someone that was really close to me information about a youth and her sister. And I didn't share names, but I told her, I said, man, this is some of the situations that have come to me, and her response was, a sister would never do that to another sister.
Ooh,
And I said, how do you know this? Because you're not in their house. You're not in their situation. You don't even know who I'm talking about. The only thing that you came to the realization of is a sister wouldn't do that to another sister due to your perception of life, because your sister would never do that to you. At least you assume. Because again, anyone can do anything. I am under the belief that anyone can do anything. Most
yep.
people are, we don't have a proclivity to do everything, but anyone can do anything.
Yes.
But but at that moment, that's when I realized, I was like, wow, people, and this was when I was about 21 or even younger. I might have been 20 or 21. And that's when I realized, people won't always believe everybody's story.
Mhm.
It's happened to me, where I share information. I mean, even, close to home, share information of things that have happened. And it's like, did it really happen like that though? And I'm like, Yes, it
And you're
did.
like, I know it sounds unbelievable, but I truly couldn't make this up.
Yeah. Why would I want to make this up? Like,
Oh,
but,
exactly.
but all that to say, at the end of the day, when we're not being believed, it it doesn't deteriorate from the story. It doesn't actually remove from the story because someone else is unbelieved. That doesn't now make it that the story is not true.
Yeah.
And we don't have to hold on to the harbor to get more pain because someone chooses not to believe our story. And so it's basically, I always say it this way. It's like unforgiveness is drinking poison, hoping that the other person it dies from it.
Yeah.
The only person who will get hurt from that is us.
Yeah.
We're the only one. Like that's why it's so important for us to make sure that we're finding healing, because we can't control what other people do.
No, no.
I teach this in schools. I do a lot of speaking around this. You can never control what someone else chooses to do, think, or say. What you are always in control of are your thoughts, your actions, and your mouth. And so, how we choose to proceed from that is all up to our choice. And again, it's not easy in any way, shape, or form, but someone's lack of belief does not make the story untrue. To the
Thank
person who's not believing,
you. Hmm.
this might be a question that I'll end up talking about at some point if you end up bringing this up anyway. Um, Media literacy. This might sound really weird, but media literacy, I think, is one of the greatest gifts that we have been given, and people are not using it. It's
Yes.
like they're shown stories of all these little animals and wild robots and Lion King and all these stories that are being given to us, and we sit down, we watch these stories, and we empathize with these characters. And we're looking at robots and we're looking at chipmunks.
Sorry, I just thought I just literally
No,
got a mental picture of the minions. Okay, sorry.
no, sir, no. Sit down with minions.
Right.
Sit down with whatever, and you're sitting there. You're like, oh, I feel bad for the minions.
Oh,
That story is literally not true, and yet we can still empathize with a minion. We can empathize with a wild robot. But you know what is true is the themes that are derived from those stories,
the feeling.
the
Yes.
feelings that come from those stories, the creators, the people who create who set up these stories, they found a way to bring in real human life interactions and life situations and put it in a way that is now making it more comfortable for us to be able to see and to basically internalize, because we can empathize with a chipmunk, but we won't empathize with a child who's in Palestine and doesn't have food.
Let's talk about
But
it.
we'll empathize with the, I don't know, with Simba who lost a father, but we won't sympathize or empathize with that black child in Chicago or New York who lost his father to violence. So media, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little media literacy. You sit down, you listen, you watch these stories, but they are literally given to us from real life situations.
Yeah.
And so now people can empathize with that, but they can't empathize with humanity. And so what I say to you, the person who cannot believe, is read more stories then.
Yes.
Listen to what's out there in the world. Like spend time to internalize a little bit more. And sometimes put yourself in the shoes of those stories of the real people that
Yeah.
you're listening to, because it'll make things more real. It'll
Yeah.
make things as though when it does happen, you can start believing a little bit more. And realize that the stories that you see online, the fake stories and whatever, the Disney and the Cartoon Network, all of these, I don't know if Cartoon Network's still out there, but
I
but
don't know
all
either.
of, all of those stories are taken from real life situations,
Yeah.
for the most part, and we can learn from media literacy in order for us to also be able to connect to our human lives.
Thank you. So that made me think of two things I want to insert here from like a more like research lens too. The first is that trauma, and it took me a long time to learn this, but trauma is not the actual thing that happened to you. Trauma
No.
comes from then on when you do decide to confront or heal it, it's from then people not believing that that happened to you. So what
Mm.
that feels like to us as humans is it feels like a betrayal. It feels like, well, I can't trust you because could you possibly trust me or love me if you're telling me you don't believe me and this awful thing happened to me? And it's because they have not perhaps met that type of ignorance, incompetence, or darkness. Let's call it what it is. Because as you stated earlier, and what I also believe is it's very similar. There's this great clip I love. I love so much of James Baldwin's work through the years as a writer myself. But he has this great clip. It's very popular and well known, but he's going on and on about as you're walking down the street and you look into the face of another person, you could be that cop. You could be that person. You could be that person arrested. And he goes through this whole level of that awareness. And I think sometimes because people have made this like it's so complex or so, no, there's a few key things. And here's the neuroscience part. This has been proven by researchers